Hi, Beyond listeners. Welcome back to the Beyond podcast. This is finally part 3 of my infertility journey. This episode is about how to be okay with letting go of your past self, no matter whether it was bad or good. It's about how you can find contentment with your current self, even though you may not have full clarity of your future self. It's about how to let go of what has been ingrained into you through family, society, culture, and truly be comfortable with you and your ever evolving needs and wants. It's about being comfortable with your now because by being comfortable with your now, it will allow you to change for the better. Now, the first 2 episodes went through my journey describing how I once was desperate for a family of 4 or 5, how I relied on this perfect family checklist. And I didn't want to be happy until that checklist was fulfilled. I kept myself from feeling content because it depended on this checklist. Now I have a family of 3, 1 child and a dog, if that counts. And I could not be more fulfilled. Here is part 3 of my infertility journey. Hi, everyone. You are listening to Beyond, and I'm your host, Dr. Flora. Listen, life is hard. You don't have to do it alone. As a mindset coach, physician, mom, and an infertility warrior, I have mastered techniques to help move you towards contentment and growth. I can't wait to go along with this crazy ass life journey with you while making sure you feel like your best self. This podcast is meant to have you feel unstuck from your rut and less alone. Let's do this. I went from being a woman whose contentment relied heavily on her life checklist to someone who took control of her growth, her life, who let go of external opinions and external values that didn't align with mine, and someone who started to hold more value of her own. My first step of taking control over this awful infertility game of probability probably came after my second unsuccessful embryo transfer. I was tired. I was anxious. My mood was low. I overall felt that my mental health was slipping. And despite the advice of my doctor, who told me that the probability of success was increased the more back to back transfers you do, I decided to take a break. AKA, I took control. I took a 4-week break off, away from this infertility mindset. That meant no injections, no creams, no meds shoved up my vagina, no messes, no breathing exercises before and after these shots, no icing, no resting, no pain, well, minimal pain, no appointments, no extra driving. I felt free, truly free. And in this overall brief moment, I felt content. These weeks were my first taste of control and growth, and I didn't even know it at the time. That checklist, yeah, it was still there. I definitely went back to it, and I definitely pursued more cycles and more tries to conceive. My second step towards taking control over this infertility game was after my pregnancy loss that I talked about in my first episode. I mean, I was devastated. I went through that story, and you guys know how much it crushed me. I still remember this moment in the parking garage after my doctor's appointment where we confirmed for the second time that I had lost the pregnancy. I was in the driver's seat of my car in this parking garage bawling. I mean, tears, snot, screaming. I mean, something inside of me had just broken. I truly felt lost. I can't describe in words the depth of what I felt, but I felt unrecognizable. Something prompted me amid the snot, the tears, the wailing, the pounding on the steering wheel. Something prompted me to call my office manager right then and there. Amid tears, I told her, I'm going through a lot. I just lost a pregnancy. I need to take time off effective immediately. To this day, I still remember her answer, and I am so grateful for her answer. So, Ashley, if you are listening, thank you. Thank you for not asking questions, not offering advice. Thank you for simply saying, okay, I will take care of it. I am here if you need anything else. I don't think I could have answered any questions at that time. I don't think I could have explained what I was feeling at that time. I wasn't in a good headspace. I was barely in a good physical space, but I had come so close. I had gotten pregnant. I carried the pregnancy for a little bit. I felt so close to having a second baby, bringing a fourth member into this family, giving my daughter a sibling, giving my husband a child, another child, giving my parents, my in-laws, another grandchild. I'm talking about months of sacrifice and dreaming. And I realized this was a task that I took for granted. Pregnancy, getting pregnant was a task that I took for granted. And then it was abruptly ripped away from me. And I continued to carry that heavy weight of guilt that I was not able to fulfill this quote unquote easy task, this simple duty that I felt was mine to carry out and only mine. At that time, I remember thinking, one, I got to drive home. So get it together, Flora. But two, what felt safe? The only thing that felt safe to me was to pause. And I think that's what prompted me to call my office manager in a heartbeat. I needed to pause and start on myself from scratch. And I began with my priorities, me, of course, Gia, and Sanjay. And I continued to repeat those priorities over and over and over again throughout my journey. Me, Gia, and Sanjay, period. So for the first time in my life, in my educational and professional career, I took time off for myself. I knew I had to stop hustling. And what I mean by that, I knew I had to stop trying to do it all. Full-time doc, full-time wife, full-time mom, full-time infertility patient, full-time daughter, sister, friend. I am a badass superwoman. I will admit that, but I do not need to be her 100% of the time in all categories of my life. By taking time off, I gave my permission to grieve. I gave my permission to sit in the shit that is involved with the lows of infertility. I gave myself a chance to breathe, to cry, to sleep, journal, eat, repeat, and also be present with my priorities, me, Gia, and Sanjay. After sitting in my feels, after I started to heal, I started to execute my plan. All of my decisions depended on those three priorities. I started with keeping boundaries at work. If I had to change my patient schedule based upon a sudden change with my infertility schedule or appointments or medications, I stopped double booking patients. I stopped working extra hours to accommodate more patients. I stopped being a yes woman for extra side projects for zero pay, by the way. I stopped being a yes woman for bringing in food and coordinating events within the office. I stopped feeling guilty for not being everything to everyone with this first step. I realized how impossible that feat was, how I was setting myself up for failure and then blaming myself for that failure. I slowly started to undo this deep seated notion that was ingrained into me from a very early age that I had to be the matriarchal character in every story that I was living through. It was time for me to take a back seat on everything except for my priorities, me, Gia, and Sanjay. That also meant keeping boundaries with my family. Of course, my family members knew what was going on. They knew I was having trouble getting pregnant. They knew I started IVF. They were there when I got the news of my first unsuccessful transfer. But it did become burdensome at some points. And the nitty-gritty details, the in-between moments, I really started to be choosy with what I shared. Let me put it this way. I wouldn't go to my accountant for law advice, or you wouldn't go to your doctor for tax advice. Of course, each person would offer their own personalized opinions based on their experience, based on anecdotes, but they weren't experts in that respective field. And their advice may not fit your very specific needs. So, my family's coping strategy and ways to support were just simply different from mine and what was effective for me. And don't worry, I found my people. I found certain family members. I found friends that were my go to, that were either experienced in infertility or knew how to support me through coping with loss and angst and overwhelm. And yes, I kept my family afloat with the large overall transitions and updates. But in order to protect my peace and space, I learned that I didn't always have to go deeper. And of course, I still sought comfort from them because they were good at those specific things. If I wanted a comfort meal, if I wanted a hug, if I wanted company, if I wanted to escape and hang, if I needed help with my daughter, I knew I could rely on my family. I knew that my parents, my in-laws, they would drop everything in a heartbeat. And they did multiple times when I needed them, when we both needed them, when Gia needed them. And I'm still forever grateful for everyone that played their part in this journey. Okay, so imagine this new me, right? Good boundaries, starting to strike a good balance with work and friends and family. Let's fast forward to our last embryo transfer in 2020. Like I said, by this time, I felt a little more balanced. And also by this time, my husband and I had discussed a variety of options when it came to family planning. We could continue pursuing IVF, which meant after our last embryo transfer, I would have to go through more medications and more procedures to get more eggs. We could pursue adoption. We could pause again, or we could stop pursuing trying to have more kids altogether. At that time, we decided to pause because it had taken a toll on our relationship and our ability to bounce back from those grieving moments. We also decided to take a pause at that time because we wanted to see what it was like to have a family of three. I mean, by the time that we decided to do our transfer in the middle of 2020, it had almost been 6 months, maybe a little bit longer, since my last unsuccessful IVF transfer. I had had another miscarriage at that time. And I had a pretty traumatic D&C, which is a procedure to remove all remnants of fetal tissue. And it was painful. And I was going through a lot of grieving at that time. And it just felt like there was a dagger going through my heart as I was going through that D&C procedure. And for anyone who's gone through it after a pregnancy loss, they probably can understand and empathize the depth of how complex these emotions are amid grieving a not only a lost pregnancy, but a lost thought, a lost future or potential future. So because it had been a little over 6 months, we took a long break and enjoyed our present, our now. We took full advantage of being present for our family of 3. Remember in my first episode, I had described that there was a point in time towards the beginning of my infertility journey where I don't remember moments. I don't have memories. I just have really dark memories of anger and envy and frustration and fatigue and just lots of lows as I was going through IVF. But this time, I have core memories. I have core experiences. I have pictures that I remember being in the moment. That wasn't the case anymore, where I was longing for that checklist that wasn't attainable as easy as I had initially thought. I mean, I initially actually took it for granted. By the time we also decided to move forward with this last transfer, remember, mind you, it was 2020. That means pandemic. And we had found out a lot more information about COVID, and we felt, especially as physicians, more confident in infection prevention and how to take necessary steps. On top of that, besides going to work and Gia going to school and distant learning, social life was slow. Extracurricular activities weren't really existent. Vacations weren't really a thing right at that time. It was just the 3 of us going to work, going to school, returning, and staying at home. I thought it was the perfect time to do this last transfer with this last embryo while we are overall in a low stress environment. And my doctor agreed. So as we were going through the blood work, the prep, as I remember getting that big box shipped to my house of just all the medications, injectables, oral, vaginal, I mean, all the things. God, it was so painful. I still remember this. And I still remember while I was injecting myself, having just plain regret. Like, why am I doing this again? I was so happy. But as we were prepping, Sanjay and I decided to continue our conversation about family planning. We had just spent a glorious 6+ months and we were happy. And it went deeper than that. We were fulfilled. We were content. And on the flip side, we could also imagine ourselves going through the grueling, first few months of infanthood, the hardest time where we're all trying to stay afloat. And then this time we would have a 5-year-old on our hands going alongside with the ride. And we also saw ourselves happy, content, and fulfilled with that scenario too. So we were ready either way. We just knew we wanted to live our life without regret and without lingering in loss and sadness. And needless to say, I mean, we're a family of 3. So that last IVF embryo transfer did not make it. And of course, my body being my body, I had a positive pregnancy test. I went through a quick high. The pregnancy didn't last and my mood dropped. Of course, I was disappointed, but I knew the steps. I knew how to grieve. I knew what to do. I knew I needed to take space and time. And I knew I had to just go through the process. and go through my feelings. And after that period of time, I got really excited. I got excited for the opportunity to fly with what we have, the family of 3. I was happy to have less expenses. I was happy to have more space. I was happy to get more rest. I was happy to have more time. I started to see the benefits here of this alternate reality that is now my reality. I saw benefits that actually affected our entire family in a positive way. So I started to let go of that old view of my life, of our family. And I started to get excited about my future. I mean, we tried our best, we gave it our all, and it wasn't meant to be, and that is okay. I felt like this weight was lifted off of my shoulders, and I started to let go of those old desires and dreams. And for the first time in a long time, I felt happy to make new ones. I was happy to, like I said, fly. We went through our storm, but we did not make a rainbow baby. So, in the fertility world, a rainbow baby is a baby that is born after a couple has trouble conceiving. So, we went through our storm and we didn't make a rainbow baby, but we still moved forward with purpose, with passion, with presence, and with peace with our beautiful family of 3. And we continue to do so. I hope my journey inspires you all, whether you're going through infertility or not, to be okay with your current self, even though you may be feeling a little shitty. I hope it inspires you to become excited for the future you that is developing through the shit. I hope this inspires you to let go of things that are not working for you and to explore a new reality where you could truly be happy, content, fulfilled, and know that you could come back to that contentment regardless of what obstacles life continues to throw at you. I hope you guys enjoyed this. Thanks for listening and thanks for all your support. We'll see you next time. Bye. Thank you so much for joining and spending your precious time here with me. As someone who prioritizes her energy, I am so grateful that you chose to spend yours here. To help me help you, please take an extra 30 seconds of your time to rate and review the podcast on your listening platform. For more tips and a behind-the-scenes look into my life, follow me on Instagram at Dr. Flora Sinha. That's Dr. Flora Sinha. Finally, connecting with you truly fills my cup. So DM me on Instagram, email me at florasinhamd@gmail.com, repost if you love this episode. I love hearing from you. I am so grateful for you and cannot wait to be back for the next episode. Bye.